Nehemiah's story is a true testament to how a clear purpose can transform a life and impact an entire community. Nehemiah wasn't a prophet or a military leader but a cupbearer, responsible for serving the king and ensuring the safety of his drinks. Yet, upon hearing about the situation in Jerusalem, his heart was deeply moved. He felt a burden, a responsibility that went beyond his daily duties. This sense of mission didn't come out of nowhere, it was a response to the urgent need of his people. Here we see the first lesson: true productivity is born when we find a purpose that deeply resonates within us. Nehemiah did not allow his comfortable position in the palace to prevent him from acting. He could have ignored the situation, continuing his life without interruption, but he chose to do what was right, even knowing that he would face difficulties. This type of determination is rare and powerful. Nehemiah teaches us that productivity is not just about efficiency or doing more in less time. It's about doing the right things, the things that truly matter, even when it requires sacrifice. Before taking any action, Nehemiah prayed. For days, he fasted and prayed to the God of heaven, seeking guidance and strength. This spiritual and mental preparation was the foundation upon which he built his mission. Nehemiah knew that for his plans to succeed, they had to align with God's will. Often, in the rush to be productive, we forget the importance of seeking this connection, of aligning our desires with something greater than ourselves. Nehemiah reminds us that a purpose guided by faith has transformative power. Nehemiah's vision was clear: to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, to restore the security and dignity of the Jewish people. He wasn't just concerned with the physical structure but with the symbolism the walls represented: protection, identity, and God's presence with his people. This clarity of vision is what drove every one of his subsequent actions. When we have a clear vision, we can channel our efforts more efficiently, knowing exactly where we want to go and why. This mission also teaches us about the importance of courage. Nehemiah, as a cupbearer, had no political or military power. Approaching King Artaxerxes to ask for help was a risky move that could have cost him his life. However, Nehemiah did not hesitate. His courage came from understanding that he was doing God's work. He knew that with God on his side, even the kings of the earth could be moved in his favor. This unwavering confidence in the righteousness of his cause made him persist, even in the face of the greatest challenges. Finally, Nehemiah's mission shows us that a well-defined purpose is the engine that drives true productivity. When we know what we want and why we want it, our actions gain uncommon strength and clarity. Nehemiah was not just rebuilding walls, he was restoring a nation, renewing the faith of a people. This larger vision is what turned his task into a monumental work. Are you ready to discover your purpose and thus multiply your productivity? Nehemiah knew that to accomplish the grand task of rebuilding Jerusalem's walls, it wasn't enough just to have a purpose. Meticulous planning was necessary. He didn't start the work immediately after hearing the news about Jerusalem's destruction. Nehemiah first took time to reflect, fast, and pray, seeking divine guidance on how to proceed. This period of spiritual and mental preparation was crucial. He knew that without a well-structured plan, even the noblest of purposes could fail. After this time of internal preparation, Nehemiah began to plan the practical details. He assessed the extent of the damage and the resources needed for the reconstruction. Even as a foreigner in the Persian court, Nehemiah did not hesitate to approach King Artaxerxes to ask for permission and help. But before doing so, he carefully prepared his request, knowing he wouldn't have a second chance. He asked the king not only for permission to leave but also for letters of recommendation to ensure safe passage and resources for the construction. This seemingly bold request was, in fact, the result of meticulous planning. Nehemiah also considered the time needed for the work and made arrangements so that everything would be ready when he arrived in Jerusalem. He requested the right type of wood and other materials from the king, knowing exactly what would be needed for the construction. This level of detail is one of the reasons Nehemiah was so successful. He left nothing to chance, and this attention to detail allowed the project to progress without unnecessary interruptions. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, Nehemiah did not immediately announce his plans. Instead, he conducted a night inspection of the walls with only a few trusted men. He wanted to see the city's actual condition with his own eyes before involving others in the project. This step shows Nehemiah's wisdom in personally assessing the situation before sharing his vision with others. He knew that to motivate the people, he first needed to fully understand the task ahead. Nehemiah's planning also included anticipating difficulties and opposition. He knew that the reconstruction of the walls wouldn't be a smooth process and that he would face resistance, both from external enemies and internal demotivation. Therefore, he prepared his plan with these challenges in mind. Nehemiah assigned different sections of the wall to different families and groups, ensuring that everyone had a clear and vital role in the project. This division of tasks increased efficiency and commitment among all involved. Additionally, Nehemiah was always ready to adapt his plan as circumstances changed. When threats of attacks arose, he quickly adjusted the strategy, placing half the workers on guard while the other half continued construction. This kind of flexibility is crucial in any large-scale project. Nehemiah shows us that a good plan is one that is both detailed and adaptable. Therefore, Nehemiah's story teaches us that planning and strategy are fundamental to achieving success in any endeavor. Without a plan, even the noblest purpose can get lost amid difficulties. And have you carefully planned the steps you need to take to achieve your goals? Perhaps it's time to reflect and strategize, ensuring that every action you take is aligned with your larger objectives. No great project is accomplished without facing obstacles, and Nehemiah knew this from the start. When he began rebuilding Jerusalem's walls, he encountered a series of challenges, both from external enemies and internal issues. These obstacles could have easily halted the work, but Nehemiah demonstrated determination and resilience, offering us valuable lessons on how to deal with adversities. The first obstacles came in the form of external opposition. Sanballat, Tobiah, and other enemies of the Jews were furious to see the walls being rebuilt. They used various tactics to try to stop the progress, initially mocking the builders' efforts, then threatening armed attacks, and finally conspiring to bring Nehemiah down. These attacks could have easily discouraged the workers and interrupted the work, but Nehemiah was undeterred. He responded to the threats with concrete action. He armed the workers, set up watch shifts, and continuously prayed, asking for God's protection. The way Nehemiah dealt with these enemies is an example of how to face adversity with faith and pragmatism. He didn't ignore the threats, but he also didn't let them divert him from his purpose. By staying focused and taking practical measures to protect his workers, Nehemiah ensured that the work continued even under constant pressure. This approach teaches us that when confronted with challenges, we must be prepared to act practically while also trusting in divine providence. Besides the external threats, Nehemiah also had to deal with internal problems that could have sabotaged the project. The Jewish people were demotivated, tired, and fearful of imminent attacks. The hard work, long hours, and constant threat of attack began to weigh on the workers, leading some to question whether it was worth continuing. Nehemiah, however, recognized these feelings and quickly acted to motivate his people. He reminded everyone of the greater purpose. Rebuilding the walls was not just a physical task but a spiritual and communal mission. He encouraged them to remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Nehemiah 4 verse 14. Nehemiah also instituted a system where the workers built with one hand while holding a weapon in the other. This not only increased security but also gave the workers a sense of control and active participation in the city's defense. This type of practical and inspiring leadership was essential to keep morale high and ensure that everyone remained committed to the mission, even under pressure. Nehemiah shows us that to overcome obstacles, we must stay focused on the ultimate goal and find creative ways to motivate the team. Another important point was how Nehemiah dealt with issues of social injustice that arose during the construction. Some wealthier Jews were exploiting the poor by charging high interest rates on loans and, in some cases, forcing them to sell their properties and even their children to pay off debts. When Nehemiah learned of this, he was outraged and confronted those responsible, demanding that they stop these unjust practices. He then gathered all the people and made the rich swear to return the properties and forgive the debts. This episode shows that Nehemiah was not only concerned with the physical construction of the walls but also with justice and equity within the community. He knew that a divided and unjust people could not prosper, no matter how strong the walls around them were. In all these examples, we see how Nehemiah faced challenges with a combination of faith, practical action, and moral leadership. He didn't let obstacles bring him down but used each one as an opportunity to reinforce the people's determination and unity. Nehemiah teaches us that obstacles are inevitable, but how we face them determines our success. If you are facing difficulties in your own projects, remember Nehemiah, stay focused, find strength and faith, and take the practical steps needed to keep moving forward. Nehemiah understood from the beginning that to rebuild the walls in record time, he would need to rely on the collective strength of his people. He knew that the success of the undertaking didn't depend solely on his own determination but on the unity and collaboration of everyone. By gathering families, each with a specific task, Nehemiah turned a monumental project into a series of manageable tasks, thereby multiplying productivity. By dividing the work in an organized way, Nehemiah ensured that each group focused on a section of the wall, which allowed the work to progress quickly on multiple fronts simultaneously. The effectiveness of this approach showed that teamwork can accelerate the completion of any project, even those that seem impossible. As it is written in Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor." Nehemiah also demonstrated deep respect for the skills and talents of each person involved. He didn't treat everyone uniformly but recognized individual abilities and allocated tasks accordingly. This sensitivity to each person's strengths and weaknesses not only increased efficiency but also strengthened the spirit of cooperation and belonging among the workers. Another important aspect was Nehemiah's leadership, which motivated and inspired the people to do their best. He didn't just oversee the work but was also present, working alongside others. This attitude served as an example and encouragement, showing that when leaders and teams are aligned and committed, no obstacle is insurmountable. And speaking of teamwork, if you're finding value in these lessons and want to continue being inspired to transform your life, don't forget to subscribe to the Divine Prosperity channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Together, we can continue building walls of success and prosperity in our lives. The speed with which Nehemiah and his people rebuilt Jerusalem's walls is impressive, 52 days. This extraordinary achievement wasn't just a matter of planning and teamwork but also of unwavering determination. Nehemiah had a sense of urgency, a clear understanding of the importance of what he was doing, which led him to eliminate distractions and maintain absolute focus. This sense of urgency was fueled by the conviction that every day mattered, that the walls could not remain in ruins any longer. Nehemiah understood that the mission of rebuilding the walls wasn't just about physical security but about restoring the dignity and identity of his people. This deep understanding of the impact of his work drove him to work with an intensity that was reflected throughout the community. The people saw in Nehemiah a leader who was fully committed to the project's success, and this inspired them to follow his example. When a leader demonstrates such a level of commitment, it creates an environment where productivity naturally flourishes. Nehemiah's faith also played a crucial role in accelerating the results. He had no doubt that his mission was in line with God's will, and this certainty gave him the courage and strength needed to continue, even when circumstances were difficult. Nehemiah prayed continuously, asking God to strengthen his hands for the work. Nehemiah 6 verse 9. This reliance on divine strength is one of the secrets to his efficiency. Nehemiah didn't rely solely on his own abilities but constantly sought God's help, knowing that with him, all obstacles could be overcome. Nehemiah's determination also manifested in his ability to stay focused amid distractions. Even when enemies tried to divert him from the work with proposals for negotiations or with threats, Nehemiah refused to stop. He sent clear messages that he was committed to the work and would not be interrupted. "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down," Nehemiah 6 verse 3, was his response to the enemies who wanted to pull him away from the construction. This response is a powerful reminder that when we are in the middle of something truly important, we must protect our focus with all our might. Besides focus, Nehemiah's organization was also a determining factor in how quickly the work was completed. He knew how to distribute tasks, set deadlines, and motivate people to fulfill their duties within the established timelines. This approach not only sped up the construction but also ensured that everyone involved understood the importance of their role in the project. Nehemiah led with a clear vision and the ability to communicate that vision so that everyone understood its value and urgency. Finally, Nehemiah showed that speed in execution does not mean compromising quality. Even working with such haste, he ensured that the walls were built solidly and securely. This balance between speed and quality is one of the greatest lessons we can take from his leadership. By accelerating the results, Nehemiah proved that when there is a clear purpose, strong determination, and efficient planning, success can be achieved in much less time than expected, without sacrificing excellence. If you apply these principles to your projects, you will see that the time you thought was insufficient may actually be more than enough to accomplish your dreams. And what will you start accelerating today? After 52 days of hard work, the walls of Jerusalem were finally complete. This was a historic milestone, a testament to the power of faith, unity, and dedicated work. Nehemiah knew that this was not just a moment of completion but one of celebration. He understood the importance of pausing to recognize the progress made, both to thank God and to reinforce the spirit of community and perseverance among the people. This moment of celebration was essential to consolidate the success of the work and renew the enthusiasm of all those involved. Nehemiah organized a great celebration with songs, praises, and sacrifices, acknowledging that the reconstruction of the walls was a victory not just of human effort but also of divine intervention. He brought in the Levites and singers for the occasion, who sang hymns of praise and gratitude to God. This celebration was much more than a simple party. It was an act of worship, a moment to remind everyone that while they had worked hard, it was God who enabled them to complete the work. The Bible highlights that the people rejoiced because God had given them great joy, Nehemiah 12 verse 43. This celebration also had a profound psychological and spiritual impact on the people. It reinforced the sense of unity and belonging to something greater than themselves. By celebrating together, the Jews reaffirmed their identity as God's chosen people, which strengthened them to face future challenges. Nehemiah knew that recognizing achievements was crucial to maintaining high morale and preparing the people for the next steps in rebuilding the city and the nation. Additionally, the celebration served as a way to renew commitment. By recognizing progress, the Jews also committed to protecting and maintaining what had been achieved. Nehemiah, always the wise leader, used the occasion to reaffirm the promises made to the Lord and to encourage the people to continue living according to God's precepts. The celebration, therefore, was not just a moment of joy but also a call to continuity and vigilance. The lesson here is clear: celebrating victories, big or small, is essential for ongoing motivation. Whether in personal or professional projects, recognizing and celebrating progress gives us renewed energy to keep moving forward. And how are you celebrating the achievements in your life? Remember that every step forward deserves to be recognized and celebrated. The completion of Jerusalem's walls was a great accomplishment, but Nehemiah knew that the real task didn't end there. The physical protection the walls provided was important, but even more crucial was the spiritual and moral protection of the community. Nehemiah understood that for the work done to have a lasting impact, it was necessary to maintain persistence and discipline, ensuring that the people remained committed to the principles that led them to success. After the walls were completed, Nehemiah focused on strengthening the governance and spiritual life of the people. He appointed guards for the gates and organized the people into groups so they could watch and protect the city. He also worked to ensure that religious practices were properly restored, bringing back the reading of the Torah and renewing the covenant between God and Israel. Nehemiah knew that the physical construction of the walls was just the beginning. The true fortress of Jerusalem was in its faithfulness to God and obedience to His laws. Nehemiah also instituted social and economic reforms to ensure that justice and equity prevailed among the people. He corrected practices of exploitation and oppression that had arisen during the construction, restoring order and ensuring that everyone had the opportunity to prosper. These reforms were essential for the long-term stability of the city and showed that Nehemiah was committed not only to the physical reconstruction but also to the spiritual and social renewal of Jerusalem. Nehemiah's persistence in protecting what had been achieved is a vital lesson for all of us. Often, after reaching a goal or completing a project, we may be tempted to relax and lose focus. However, Nehemiah shows us that it is at this moment, after the initial victory, that we must redouble our efforts to maintain and protect what has been achieved. Long-term success depends on the ability to remain committed and vigilant, even when the main task seems to be completed. Therefore, Nehemiah's story teaches us that the work does not end with the victory. The real challenge lies in maintaining and protecting what has been achieved, ensuring that the efforts made are not in vain. And how are you protecting the victories you have already achieved? Remember that persistence is the key to lasting success. Now that you've understood how Nehemiah managed to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in record time, it's time to apply these principles to your life. What wall do you need to raise? Whatever the project or challenge before you, remember, with a clear purpose, strategic planning, unwavering focus, teamwork, and determination, you can accelerate results in ways you never thought possible. And most importantly, don't forget that faith plays a crucial role. When you truly believe you are on the right path, it gives you the strength to overcome any obstacle. Nehemiah's story is a powerful reminder that with God by your side and a determined heart, no challenge is too great. So, what will be your next step? Share in the comments what wall you're ready to rebuild and how these teachings will help you. And of course, subscribe to the Divine Prosperity channel, activate notifications so you don't miss any content, and keep learning how to transform your life.